Julian, welcome. It's so good to have you here. To start off with, can you just tell us a little bit about your studio and where you're based?
I am based out of the greater Charlotte, North Carolina area. Currently a traveling piano teacher, so I travel to my students' home to teach them, and I have about 14 students in my studio right now.
Nice. Okay, so let's take it back a little while before you were a teacher. What was music like growing up for you? Did you practice regularly? Was practice a struggle? What was that experience like?
So it's so funny because when I was little, my mom likes to tell the story all the time about how she got me into piano lessons, which was a keyboard that my older brother had. I actually found it, and she always used to say I didn't bang on the keys, but I used like proper hand technique and things.
Oh,
And I think that carried on through my piano lessons throughout the year because I was just very naturally motivated. My mother never once had to tell me, all right, go practice or anything like that. I just took the initiative myself to do that.
okay. So you were a steady practicer without parent encouragement. One of the unusual students, then, for sure. What do you think motivated you to practice? You just loved the sound or the pieces, or what was it?
It was always so music was like a constant in my home. There was all different kinds of music that my parents listened to. My mom used to be like she was a radio host of her jazz hour at her college and that kind of thing, and that kind of made its way into our home. So I think hearing music all around and also just the opportunity to play some big pieces. I was constantly listening to music and I want to play that, and that would motivate me to kind of keep practicing and getting better.
Fantastic. Sounds like a wonderful environment to grow up in with music. What was your teacher like in terms of practice? Did they give you practice notes? Did they write on your music? Did you have a notebook? How was that handled?
As far as like I had a very first teacher, Benita Blackman. We would drive to her house. And then there was Miss Cofield after that. For those two teachers, I'd never really had like notebooks or anything like that. It was out of the Alfred series. I remember that. It was okay, here's your assignments. You need to work on this, you need to work on that. And then they would hear me when I come back. So I didn't have like a notebook or anything or notes. They would write down on the piece itself, and I would just remember from those notes.
Okay, so it was just all relying on your memory then and how
Yeah.
dedicated you were. What about with your own students now? Do you approach practice any differently to how you were taught?
Yeah, so having had multiple teachers and making my way through college and things like that, and even having a teacher as recently as about 2 years ago myself, I use Vivid Practice app, and before that, I used Tanara, and I very much try to keep piano light. I try to make sure that they are able to express how they're supposed to practice. I make sure they show me and I make sure they know how to get to the notes themselves in order to use that. So it's kind of a 180 a little bit from the way I had growing up. So
Yeah, that's interesting. So you're saying you make sure they're able to tell you
mhm.
what they're going to practice in their own kind of words, so you make sure they understand that way as well as they're able to check the notes to in case they forget. Do you find that they're fairly consistent with practicing, or is it kind of hit and miss? Different students, different experiences?
It varies for the student, and usually the more parent involvement or the more I see parents like come at the last 3 or 5 minutes of the lesson to understand what they should be listening for and what their kid needs to do. I find that their kids tend to check their notes regularly, and the other students they might check it here and there, but it's not always a guarantee.
Yeah. I mean, we said from the start that you were the exception as a child, that your mom didn't need to pester you to practice or be too involved. You just wanted to do it by yourself, and that's not always the experience. Do you try and encourage all the parents to come in for the last few minutes? Is that something that's standard for you?
Yes, depends on the parent. Some parents work from home, so I find that they can't always come to that last 5 minutes, but I always try to make sure I make time to have sometimes my student explain to their parents, or I explain it myself what they should be listening for in that little 5 minutes that we have left
Yeah.
over.
It's really great when we can get that kind of buy in. It might seem to some teachers, especially those who haven't taught in students' homes, that it might be easier in that case. I've found it to be less easy to get the parent involved because we do both. So some of our teachers go to students' homes as well as we have students come here. And if students are coming here, their parents are usually the ones dropping them off. So we actually can catch them. Whereas when they're having lessons at their home, it's often because they have a childminder or someone else looking after the kids. And that's why they want lessons in their home because they're not there to
Exactly.
give them a lift or whatever. So, yeah, it can be challenging to get their buy in when you don't encounter them every week.
I agree.
Okay, so do you have any favorite practice strategies or tactics or practice games, ways you encourage students to practice?
I've done a few of the practice hero. I've gone through that with a couple of students, more so advanced students, and I've done a few challenges, like the summer challenge and things of that nature throughout the year to try to get them to practice. Outside of those things, it's just general encouragement, checking in with the parents, and then I'm equipping them this year with practice pie. In fact, I'm like doing some check-ins throughout this because my students are just coming back, where I check in with the parents and go, hey, did you read or did you look at the YouTube video? And can you answer these questions about your child's practice for me? Just so that way I have like a picture of what that's like and I know what I'm walking into when I'm teaching them.
Yeah, I love that you're holding them accountable to actually reading or watching the video. I mean, they have an option. They don't have to be a reader, right? There's both options there for them. But
Exactly.
I know how busy they are, and yet they're investing in piano lessons. So we want to help them make it worth it, you know? So it's great that you're bringing that in. And yeah, including different practice challenges and practice games and stuff. Yeah, that's fantastic. Julian, thank you so much for coming on the show and chatting to us a bit about your experience with practice. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.